Christine, I think we're okay to get started. Is that fine?
That's fine.
Awesome. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association and our accredited partner, C3B. My name is Rupalin, and I will be moderating this session. Today's webinar will cover doing more with less, managing sales activities with limited time and resources, and hosting today is Christine Bergeron, co-founder and consultant in change management and behavioral operations at C3B. Christine Bergeron is a consultant with 20 years of experience in sales and leadership. She is also the co-founder of C3B Group Conseil, a management consulting firm specialized in the human dimension of business. As a member of the Order of Chartered Administrators and of the Canadian Professional Sales Association, the American Society for Quality as a certified quality process analyst and an MBA candidate, she has devoted herself to research, furthering her knowledge on the influence and impact of behavior on overall sales and business performance, and to sharing that knowledge through consulting, conferences, and training. Now, just before we get started, I'll go over some quick housekeeping rules. So please note that all of today's attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the webinar, and that you can go ahead and ask questions or make comments using the questions function in your GoToWebinar dashboard, which should be on the right side of your screen. And they will be addressed at one point at the end of the session during the Q&A. So this webinar will be recorded and will be sent to all attendees afterwards. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Christine to start.
Thank you, Rupalin. Hi, everybody. Today, we're really going to talk about doing more with less, and hopefully I'll be able to give you guys some tricks about what to do with your time, how to manage your time and your resources. Let's be honest. We've had these issues way before COVID, just COVID's made them a little tougher. Not all the tools I'm going to tell you might work for you. So I want you guys to keep an open mind. Some of them might sound very foreign, and some of them you might have heard before. So if you have questions, like Rupalin said, at the end, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. So we'll talk about time and resources. Time you have more control over. Well, actually, that I'll get to. But resources, not as much, but you can actually manage around those limited resources. So unfortunately, I can't see your faces right now, but I'm going to bet most of you wish there were more hours in a week. And the first thing I'm going to say might sound really controversial, but working more hours actually doesn't make you more productive. In fact, there's a study that was done by someone in human capital management, Yasmin Karam, that came to the conclusion that reducing a week by 8 hours, so 40-hour week by 8 hours in the service sector, so including sales, and you'll notice I'm saying services, not production, because if you cut 8 hours of production, the machines do stop producing for 8 hours. But in service, if you cut the week by 8%, so 20% of the work week, which is 8 hours, it only reduces the productivity by 10%. So it's not a huge difference. So, and I'm not talking about the bonus of taking breaks during the day on your mental health and your physical health. And I can hear some of you thinking right now that you're amazing at working very little sleep or rest. And I bet you can. I bet you're really good at working with just, a couple of hours off. But I'm going to make you remember a scenario, way back in the day when you can, meet up with a bunch of people. Remember that one person who had a little too much to drink, but they kept insisting that they were fine, they were better than fine, they were doing amazing. So yeah, it's a colorful issue, a colorful presentation of that fact, but the effects of being tired on the brain are the same basically as alcohol consumption. So your response times are slower, your thought process is slowed down, and your overall productivity is slowed. So the ideal week would be about 37.5 hours. And again, this is according to studies, and you should have at least one full day of rest. So that means like no work-related activities. And above 48 hours of work your productivity declines really rapidly and exponentially. Almost said that in French. I apologize. So it kind of makes sense. If you're working less hours, when you are working, you're working more intensely and you're more motivated. And so it increases productivity. So I know most of you are like, but how am I going to do that? I've got so much to do. So that's where I'm going to try to help you fit all you have to do in those 40 to, let's say, maximum 48 hours a week, hopefully less than 40. So how do you take back control? Well, first of all, you don't control time. Everybody has 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you can't control time. What you can do is you can control your calendar and how you use that time. So first thing you have to do is prioritize, organize, and then delegate. So I'm going to go through different tricks for all three of those things. And you can tell me in the comments, and we'll discuss them at the end, which ones work for you and which ones you have questions about. So first one is prioritize. And this is the Covey matrix or Covey quadrants. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this matrix, but it's a really good way of prioritizing your daily tasks. So it's basically on the axis of how important something is and how urgent it is. So according to Covey, anything that's important and urgent, should be done right away. So now, examples of this is a crisis, issues that are causing downtime at your clients, pressing problems, things with deadlines. And then I could argue that things with deadlines you should have planned ahead for, but we're just going to talk really about things that are urgent in like crisis mode. Now, one thing you need to do is validate what is urgent with the person before prioritizing it. If it's a request from somebody else, make sure that it is actually urgent. A client that asks you for a price list, that's not urgent. Somebody internally who is disorganized, make sure that you are not taking their lack of organization as one of your emergencies. So it's a thing to consider. If it's your boss, you might have to consider it urgent for yourself as well. But just think about it. Is it really that urgent? I've had people tell me something was urgent. They need it next week. To me, that's not urgent. I don't need to drop everything I'm doing to do that. So I'm going to schedule it, which is the next thing. It's important, but not urgent. So anything that's planning, prospecting, administrative work, stuff that you need to do, but you don't need to do it right now, then make sure you schedule it in your calendar. And this is another trick. Schedule not just the deadline, schedule the actual time it'll take you to do it. And most humans, including myself, underestimate how long something will take me to do. How many times have you told somebody that you'd be done in 5 minutes and 15 minutes later, you're still not done? So plan more time. Worst case, it'll give you extra time in your calendar to do other things. Delegate what is less important but urgent. So it has to be done now, but it's not that important. So you can delegate it, and we'll talk about that later. It's more like transactional activities, stuff back and forth with clients or internal things, but we'll talk about that delegation later. And things that are less important and less urgent, why are they still on your to-do list? If it's not important, it's not urgent, why are you doing it? Why are you considering it something that you need to do? It might be just busy work. It might be something that you've always done, but is it relevant now for you to do? Is it something that you need to get done? So if you're questioning the relevance, maybe talk to your boss, talk to somebody in your team to see if those things still are relevant, and then re-evaluate if they are important or not. Now, another way of prioritizing is return on time invested, and this is something that CPSA teaches in all their classes, and it's a really good way of looking at things. So let's be honest, time is money. How many times have you heard that? If this concept is new to you, it's basically calculating the time that you're spending with clients versus the actual potential profit. And this is something that you need to consider. So all the prep work, all the research, every single email, every phone call, every travel, like all the travel time, every meeting that you have with this client, compared to how much income, net income, you will make with that client. So, you know, the sales minus all the discounts, minus the actual cost of whatever you're selling, and then on the time invested. If you're not logging everything into a CRM, which is, you know, not the case for everyone, start taking notes. Look at how much you are spending time with those clients. I'd suggest starting with the top clients and work your way down. You know, every time you make a phone call, write it down, either in Outlook, on a piece of paper, whatever works for you. But really start taking into consideration every moment that you've been spending towards that client. And at some point you'll see a trend and you can evaluate where your time should be spent, with whom, and on what. So you can do things more efficiently. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So organize. How many of you have calendars? I know I can't really ask you, but just think about it. How many of you have calendars who look like that you're looking at a million things to do every day? Or some of you might work with to-do lists. Personally, to-do lists scare me because they're demotivating and you end up just adding to them and barely ever crossing things out. And it just tells you what you need to get done. It doesn't tell you how much time you need to spend on these things. So if you can put each to-do into your calendar and organize it accordingly, it will really help. So let's go through some of the ways you can add time to your calendar. And yes, I said add time. So I'm going to bet that most of you, first thing in the morning, you look at your emails and you've got a routine down. You do everything about the same way each day, or maybe not. Maybe you're off the cuff. But for those of you who, you know, have a routine down, don't confuse that routine for being organized and being efficient. So like I was saying, so you check your emails first, right? And you're looking at the urgent emails, answering those right away. And then what do you do? Are you going through to check your dashboard, your calendar, and then you go back to your emails? So if you're going back to your emails, at this point, you're actually rereading these emails for a second time, and that's not really efficient. And sometimes you'll actually read those emails 2-3 times before continuing your day. And then that's not, you know, that's not great. And I'm going to tell you how much time you've lost in a few seconds doing that, going back and forth. But, you know, let's continue your day for now. And, oh no, surprise meeting. Somebody's just sent you an evite for a new meeting that you weren't aware of. So now I guess those emails and planning that you had decided to do right after that second call is now pushed back to, let me guess, your lunchtime. After work hours, you have to catch up. So what could you do to make that day more efficient using the same time? Well, group the activities together that make sense. Notice that I'm spending more time on my emails right off the start. So I am doing the urgent ones, but I am also answering the emails that I can do right now. I'm not going back to them. So I'm going to actually read them once, get that done. I'm putting the calendar and prep time right before making those calls instead of separating that. Preparation of the calls actually helps you get more out of every meeting. So putting that time in at the same time as you're booking the actual meeting will save you headaches. Most of us will put in our calendars meetings with clients, but we don't necessarily put the prep time in the calendar with it. So as I said, prep time, putting it in the calendar will help you, and it'll also help you get more out of meetings and maybe save you from a third or fourth meeting down the road. And notice that I put the dashboard right before planning. because you're probably going to be planning according to what your dashboard says. And for those of you who don't have dashboards, it might just be your stats. You're looking at what's going on and you're going to plan. So do that with your actual activities. Another thing, notice that I removed that pop-up meeting because we didn't have time in our calendar. What you can do is say no, propose another time. And a lot of you are probably going to say, well, I can't say no to a meeting if it comes from above. Actually, you can. Higher ups usually have administrative assistants that send out the meetings. And if it's urgent and important that you're there, they'll call and let you know that you need to be there. When you were on the road before, you weren't assisting every single last minute meeting that was brought up. You couldn't, you were out. So have it the same way. If it's urgent, really urgent and important, then you can reschedule things in your meeting, in your day, sorry, to attend that meeting. But otherwise, ask for the minutes of the meeting after the fact. And if you're worried about backlash, talk to your manager. Ask them which meetings you should be attending, that you must attend, and with what lead time is acceptable for you to accept or refuse a meeting. Is it 24 hours in advance so that you have time to move things? If you have a meeting planned with the client, do you drop the client to attend certain meetings? I mean, technically, because your job is to help your clients, I don't think anybody's going to be offended if you prioritize the clients. Now, if you've noticed, I added a buffer because there are going to be fires that you're going to put out. Almost every day, salespeople have fires to put out, something that's urgent and important and they need to take care of. So by putting half an hour on your calendar once a day, if you're really motivated, twice a day, you can do that so that when that meeting does come up, you can catch up on those emails and the planning that you had already scheduled. You can move it to that buffer time. And if there's no fire, which would be a miracle, I am pretty certain you guys have enough work to do during the day that you can find something to fill that time with. So, all the administrative work that you keep putting off that you don't want to do. I have yet to meet a salesperson who loves doing the administrative work, but find those buffers. If you're not comfortable with scheduling 30 minutes in your calendar where you are busy for everybody else, do it every other day. Do it once a week. Start small, build. You'll see how it helps you manage your time much better. And then there's another thing that I added, which was breaks. Don't forget to, take those breaks, to allow yourself for breaks in your calendar. Since we've been working remotely for the most part, we seem to have back to back to back to back to back meetings all day. So I've literally had people tell me that, they're not taking 5-minute breaks. They're forgetting to go get water. They're not going to the bathroom. You know, Even if it's just to stretch your legs and, take a minute to breathe, just do that. Nobody else will give you that time. They're just going to keep booking you if you're not planning accordingly. And trust me, if you've needed to go for a couple of hours and you're in different meetings, you're going to be a lot less efficient. You know, so much for active listening when you're just thinking about needing to go. And I want you guys to remember that this is just an example. So you need to figure out what works best with you, with your clients. When are you at your best with your clients? When is your head at its best to do reports, to do planning? So set everything up accordingly. Are you a morning person? Are you humming and singing the second your feet touch the floor in the morning? Or are you a Grinch until your second cup of coffee? So either way, just, maybe put your meetings and calls with clients a little later in the morning if that's the case, and get your administrative stuff and planning done first thing. All these tricks is just a question of putting things in your calendar so it's there. I know a lot of people who have a hard time being that structured, and it's okay. Start slow. Just start putting things in slowly, add time, maybe add more buffer time so that you can get stuff done when things don't go your way. Next thing is organize about all the distractions. We are constantly being bombarded with rings, dings, beeps, pop-ups, and there's a study that says, and this is going to be scary, this is from the University of California, about 82% of all interrupted work is resumed on the same day. So that's good. You get everything done anyways. The bad news is every time you're interrupted, it takes you about 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the task you were doing. So every time you look at that email, every time you look at that pop-up, especially if you have Teams where you're being bombarded every second, you're losing about 23 minutes or 20 minutes, let's be nice, 20 minutes of productivity to get back to where you were on the task you were doing. And a scary thing, and you probably are already aware of this, but we have on average an interruption every 3 minutes. So you're gonna tell me, well, it only takes me 2 minutes to answer that client. Well, first of all, probably didn't take 2 minutes. It probably took more like 5 or 10. But then it's that 5 or 10 minutes plus the 20 minutes to get back to where you were. So try, like I put in the calendar, try to put your email time, checking your emails every hour, every 2 hours, whatever works for you, whatever makes you comfortable so that you're not panicking and thinking about the emails that are coming in that you're not getting to. But when you are working on gathering information, on research, on doing your territory planning or your account planning, take down all pop-ups, make sure they're closed. Worst case, I will actually close my email Outlook. I close down Teams. I make sure that nothing, my phone is turned not off, but it doesn't buzz. It's really on airplane mode, because you will be that much more efficient. Just think about it. If you save 3 times where you don't look at that pop-up, where you don't look at that email, just 3 times a day, if you would do that, you'd already have saved about the equivalent of an hour of work of productivity. So imagine what you could do with that extra hour. It's not much. 3 times where you don't do it and you get an hour back. So I think it's worth at least trying. Some of you will panic the first few days of doing this, but it's okay. You'll get used to it and you'll see how much more efficient you are. Now, the next thing is delegate. So remember all those less important but urgent tasks? And I can just hear you guys telling me, who am I supposed to delegate to? Everybody is overworked and busy. I swear I can hear you guys thinking this. So where can you start? Well, start by taking your superhero cape off. You can't do everything for everyone. What you need to do is focus on being the best strategic salesperson you can be. That is your job. So who can you delegate to? Well, start with inside sales, if you have inside sales. Inside sales should take most of the transactional interactions with your client. And you're going to tell me, but they're too busy. They're already overbooked. Are you really helping them by not delegating this to them and doing their job? Maybe they're trying to prove to their boss that they need the extra person. Maybe they want more challenging work to get that promotion. And you need to focus on strategic account building. So if you're doing that job for them, who's doing your job? So, and remember, if you're working those extra hours, you're not really more productive. And if you can consider the return on time invested, again, not worth it. If the case is because you feel bad telling your client that they're going to have to deal with somebody else in your company, can you consider telling them that maybe they're such a valued customer that you have an entire team at their disposal to make sure that they get the answers in the best possible time. So rethink it and reword it for your clients, telling them everybody's there to help you out. We've got the entire company working for you, and it'll go over really easy. And if you seriously don't have anybody to delegate to because there's physically no one in the company to do these tasks, go back to your return on time invested. See which things you should prioritize, which activities, which clients you should prioritize. And if you're in doubt, well, sit down with your sales leader. See with them what you should be working on, what should be your priority. There's no point in trying to get everything done. You won't. So make the most of the time you do have. And then there's delegate to clients. How many of you have, repeated to clients that the calls that they make to you, they could definitely be doing online themselves? There's information on your website. Have them, encourage them to do it themselves. Keep reminding them how much time they'll save by doing it themselves. It's not a question of just your time. You're saving them time as well. By the time you get back to them, they could have found that information and gotten on to their next task much more quickly. And we all have clients that just keep calling us or emailing us every time a thought pops into their heads. With those clients, that you keep wondering why do they keep doing this to you? Reach out to them, book 15 minutes every other week, maybe every week, depending on how important this client is to you and to the company, with the return on time invested calculated and what classification this client is. And then ask them to jot down their questions, and then you can address them every meeting. So you aren't going back and forth with questions and answers and another question. You are actually doing this in a focalized way. And I don't think that there's any client out there that won't be thrilled that you are telling them you will actually have a meeting. And this can be a call, this can be a meeting on Zoom or Teams, it can be an in-person. I wouldn't recommend it because then you're losing some time in the traveling, but you can do it whatever way is best for you, but you both gain in efficiency by scheduling that time to address all those issues. And funny enough, probably in the meantime, some of those issues will have resolved themselves. They'll have figured it out on their own. And, you both save a lot of time. I am warning you though, it might take a few reminders on your behalf to, keep telling them, it's more efficient if we do this every other week, or it's more efficient if you go online and get the info yourself, or it's more efficient if you talk to our inside sales. You have to set those boundaries. And talking about boundaries, another thing is you do not need to answer in the 5 seconds after the emails come in. That is creating false expectations. You can't do it all the time. And right now, if you're still working from home and not traveling yet to see clients, then that's one thing that you seem to probably have forgotten, that when you were on the road, you couldn't answer clients within the next 2 minutes whenever they called or emailed you. So apply the same rules. You will be traveling again soon, I hope. So prioritize the things. If you're face to face with the client, you're not going to tell them to wait a minute while you answer another client. So it's the same principles. Apply them even if you are working from home. Get your stuff done timely, efficiently, and get back to your client in the next 2 hours. I'm sure they won't mind. I'm actually convinced they won't mind. Now, supply chain issues. This is a big one. A lot of us have had supply chain issues, especially since COVID. We've had some before, but it's become worse. And there's been excruciating factors that, keep adding up in the past little while. So the first thing you must consider is you have to evaluate, is it an industry problem, a world problem, or is it a company issue? you can't deal with these two sources of problems the same way, because they're not the same issue, and it's not the same issue for your clients. So if it's an industry problem or a world problem, like the war in Ukraine, for example, we know that certain supplies are going to be out of stock soon. We're not going to know how long it'll take before things get back to quote unquote normal. So let them know ahead of time. Be their ally. You know these things are going to be out of stock, that we don't know when they're going to come back. If you have the chance to help them think of alternatives before it becomes critical, help them plan their inventory better if that's an issue for them. It's all these things you don't have control over what's going on in the world. If it's because certain products are just, I'm thinking in the food industry where there's certain crops that have not yielded last year, which is now an issue for a lot of industries. There's nothing you can do to control that. What you can do is help them plan for the long term, because we don't know when these things are going to be resolved. On the other hand, if it's a company issue, then your company does have a certain level of control on the situation. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. You're going to have to consider what the overall customer needs are, your own customer. So is it critical right now? Is it urgent? Is it manageable, but you're going to need to keep watch on it? So you need to evaluate what's going on with each client. Then as a sales team, you have to have the whole picture. Is it just a certain product that you guys are selling that's an issue? Is it logistics that are an issue? So once you have the whole picture as the entire sales team together, then you can have meetings with representatives of operations, of production, logistics, wherever the issues lie. Of course, a lot of you probably aren't the ones that are going to be calling these meetings, but bring them up to your sales leaders and make sure that they call these meetings with the different representatives on different issues. Those meetings are not to attribute blame. They're not to say, well, it's your fault if we're falling behind, what's going on. The whole point of these meetings are actually to, find solutions as an entire company. Maybe it's just adjusting lead times that you give to your clients because the lead times that you've been giving aren't realistic for what the production can make. So, and trust me, if you feel like it's overwhelming for you and there's a lack of resources, of human resources in sales, the same applies to production. The same applies to logistics, to distribution. Everybody is feeling the same pain. So discuss it with them with an open mind of seeing where can we find solutions, what can we address, what can we regain control over. Is it maybe prioritizing certain products on the line? And that's why it's important that the whole sales team has the whole picture before bringing this up. Because if you're bringing up production issues one client at a time, you're not addressing the production issue, you're addressing your client issue. And nobody gains from that because you're basically bombarding them with different issues and they won't know which to prioritize. So go as a whole, big picture, company solutions. It will make a very, very big difference for everybody. And the other thing is for looking for solutions. And this is where you have to manage expectations and be honest. Whether it is world issues or company issues, you're going to have to be honest with your clients and tell them that there are these issues. Whether it's managing expectations, they're used to getting 6-week lead times. In certain industries, you can't even give pricing for more than a few months at a time. have the hard discussions with your clients. Let them know what's going on. They are not living under a rock. Give them credit. They understand. They also understand it's critical for them. But you can show understanding, but just be honest. And this is where you're going to need to be proactive. So, and this again, you're going to have to validate with your team leaders and with your company, see what their policies are on this. But do you have stock that can be used for a critical customer? So somebody that is about to, be on downtime and not be able to do their own work and deliver to their own clients. So do you have stock that you could use for these critical customers that could be restocked in time for the customers that require it down the line? Do you have alternatives that could work for these clients? And now the thing is, it's fine to think of something that could fix their problem short term, but depending on the product, depending on the issue, it can be medium and long-term solutions that you have to look for. So think longer term for your clients. You have to be proactive. If you put a Band-Aid on something for now, it doesn't solve the issue down the road, and these people are going to be back at you in a few months saying, I'm not ahead, I'm still stuck, I'm still in critical mode. So if you can find other solutions, alternatives that you can help them medium and long term, then do so. Start thinking about, do you have services and expertise that you can help your client with beyond your products, beyond what you do? Is there anything else that you can help them with? Maybe it's inventory management. Maybe it's you have R&D departments that can help them find new product lines that they could develop that would, not be an issue with what's going on. And if you want to go even further, now you really have to be creative and think about this. So in this one, this is where you have to build strategic partnerships with your clients rather than transactional ones, sorry. This becomes crucial at this point. So do you have competitors that have products that can help them in the short term? Yes, this means getting your competitor the sale for now. But if you have a strategic partnership with your client, you are still helping them. You are still getting them through this very crucial, hard time. You're their savior. And yes, I told you to, put down your superhero cape, but in this case, it might be a good idea to put it on just for a few minutes. Is there anybody, out of your competitors that can help for this one order just to get them out of critical mode? Does your company have strategic partnerships with other companies that could help with long-term supply or logistical issues? That's also something that your company can consider. And this doesn't necessarily fall in your court, I agree, but talk to your sales leader to consider it. Is there stuff that you guys can do to create better opportunities for your company to better help your clients? Because this supply chain issues are much more than just a client-based issue. It is usually the whole company that is having issues. And you have to see further than just fixing it in the company. Sometimes it's just with strategic partnerships that you can help. So yeah, manage expectations, be honest, be proactive, be creative, think outside the box. And again, make sure that what your client is saying as being critical or urgent is really critical or urgent. If they're starting to panic about stock down 3 months from now, you might not want to go and see a competitor. You might just want to see what you can do to make sure that the stock is still there. But I would say the other thing is be on good terms with everybody in your company, whether it's the guys at shipping, people at production, wherever you need to make allies, do so. They can also give you really good solutions to help with the different aspects. So now, last thing I want to talk about is this quote from Kenneth Cole, who's a fashion designer, but I really like this quote. Success has less to do with what we can get ourselves to do and more to do with keeping ourselves from doing what we shouldn't. So really take into consideration working less hours, which I know is hard for a lot of you, prioritizing things according to what's urgent and what's important. And it takes practice. We tend to react more than we are proactive. So we tend to take whatever emails come in as being always urgent, always important. If you have the discipline to put certain types of emails, not customer emails, but internal emails, to be sorted automatically into a file that you can get to at a certain point during the week where you've actually allotted time to go through all these emails. Do so. Teach people internally to, if it's urgent, actually call, or, don't send it in an email. If it's in an email, the odds are it's not urgent. Reconsider how you classify things. It has a lot to do with you. And like I said, it's not a question of controlling time, because you can't control time, but you can definitely decide what you will use your time towards. Most of these are tricks, and there's a million more. And for those of you who are in on the call at the very, very beginning, Ripplin and I was saying how difficult it was to limit the number of tools, time management tools, that are out there, because there are so many. And some of them will work for you, some of them won't. But what I'm asking you is to actually take the time to try them. Try them for a few days, see how it feels. Put that extra time in your calendar. Take those breaks, especially when you have to do stuff like planning and research. Taking a few minutes to get up and walk and get some air. It's starting to be nicer outside. Although, honestly, the past 2 days here in Montreal, we've been getting snow again, which is horrible. But, go for a few minutes outside, take some fresh air, come back inside, get back to work. It will make a huge difference. But find the tricks that work for you. I keep calling them tricks, but some of them are proven techniques. Just apply them. Try to get to the point where these are ingrained in you. Habits don't form overnight. It can take, on average, 28 days. I would say more, because 28 days, then there's an urgent matter that comes in and you slide back into your old habits. So just keep at it gradually. Like I said, the buffer, which can be called anything you want, but put it in your calendar. Make sure that everybody respects the time. Close teams when you can. These are all things, they're little things, but they're little things that add up. And like I said, remember, if you can just stop interruptions 3 times a day, you save about the equivalent of an hour. So I can't wait to hear back on which things you think you'll be using, which tricks you think you'll be applying. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for the next little while. So I will let you guys ask away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. That was such a valuable webinar. I think no matter what industry you're part of, no matter what role in sales you have, you can definitely use a lot of the tips that you offer kindly in today's webinar. As Christine had just mentioned, the question and answer period is started, so please feel free to enter any of the questions you might have on today's content in today's webinar in the question function of your GoToWebinar dashboard. Christine, we already have 2 here. Maybe I'll Yeah, I'll start with this one here. It was just
Okay.
with the precursor that Christine, you had mentioned that, everything is different for everyone, and
Yeah.
it all depends on kind of what you're used to and what you want to adapt. But this question here is starting your day earlier, like 4 a.m., make a difference in time management?
No. Unless you are beyond an early bird. If you're somebody who is more functional from 6 in the morning till noon, and that's your peak time, which I mean, for the life of me, I can't understand how that people who are like that, but that's me. I'm not, definitely not an early morning person. But if you're functioning on less sleep, because I'm going to assume that if you're getting up that early to add hours to your day, you're not getting as much sleep. Go back to my example of that drunk friend of yours who thought they were doing great. You aren't as functional if you're on less sleep. And that's scientifically proven. That's not just me making things up. Um, so ideally, I mean, if you are more functional that early, then just make sure your day finishes at 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of where your hours are best spent. But no, working 16 hours a day is definitely not going to help anything. But
Thank
more
you,
power to you if
Christine.
you get up at 4.
Yeah, 100%. Another question here is, are there any suggestions for time management apps or platforms to try?
Um, there are a few. I'm on the fence about using like apps and stuff, because they come and go, and it's more, they seem to be in fashion for a while, and then they no longer work, or they try to sell you more things. So just, good old Outlook or whatever calendar you use, something that's super easy, that's with you all the time. Um, put alarms in it, like, so that they pop up. But again, if you find an app that works for you, then by all means. But I'm on the fence about that one, because it can work short term, but not necessarily. If it's not linked to everything else, then you're duplicating what you're using. So, and you've already got tools. It's just a question of how you use them. I'm sorry I didn't have anything to recommend in particular, but there's a few, but I'm still not convinced any of them actually help that much.
That was great. Thank you, Christine. We have a good question here that is asking, have you heard of the Pomodoro timer method for your time management? If so, do you recommend it?
I have not. If this
I,
person could actually give us a few.
yeah, I just looked it up actually, Christine. It is a
Okay.
simple method to balance focus with deliberate breaks. So, step one is to plan your tasks, how many Pomodoros you might need. Do one Pomodoro, time for 25 minutes, and then take a 5-minute break, and then repeat it 4 times.
Um, I actually think that's not a bad idea. Like putting breaks our brain is wired actually to concentrate on something for, depending on the research, 20 to 30 minutes max, that
Mm-hmm.
we can focus on the same thing. So doing 25 minutes and a 5-minute break, I think, is great. Can we actually do that in our days with everything that we get bombarded with? I'm not sure, but if you can apply it to your calendar, then by all means, because you are setting up yourselves for breaks, which is essential.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be really disciplined to do that. I'm just
Thanks,
saying.
Christine. The next one here is, I like the method of using your tasks or to-do list in your calendar. Do you suggest we do this for all items that involve time spent to complete?
Um, okay. This is something where a to-do list or a task list um, can be really useful if it's little things that take only a few minutes, and then you schedule time in your calendar to do that list. If it's a task or an activity that takes you more than 5 minutes, let's say, then you should be scheduling that as an activity in your calendar on its own and not just as a task. Because if you have, let's say, 35 different tasks that are all 15, 20 minutes, when are you going to get them done? And when is that task list ever going to diminish? Because we keep adding to these. So you have to find a way. Schedule an hour on Friday afternoons to go through that task list if that's something that can help you. But like I said, if your to-do list or your task list is something that takes more time, plug it right into your calendar and make sure that it gets done, because you won't get to it. Personally, and I've seen research that to-do lists for a lot of people is a cause of anxiety. Rarely have enough time to get through the whole thing. I don't know many people who can get through their entire to-do list in a day, because it's a lot of stuff to do and we keep adding to it and adding to it. But it's a good way of keeping reminders of little things that you need to get done that you don't want to forget about. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Christine. Just a suggestion came up. So Microsoft Viva is a good tool for setting up calendar and action items. Thanks so much for that, Todd. That's great.
Thank you.
Another one here is, how do you deal with smaller volume or lower value customers who are very persistent, calling and email multiple times per day?
Well, actually, those are the clients I was talking about earlier that you either delegate them to somebody inside sales if you can. If not, you just schedule like 15 minutes every 2 weeks to actually talk to them and to go through all of the things that they add up, and actually, enforce that rule. And enforce it by telling them that it's going to save them time as well, because every time that they're writing to you, every time a thought comes up, you can argue that they're losing 20 minutes of productivity as well, because it's the same rules that I've explained for you guys applies to your clients. So if they're constantly bombarding you with different things, they're losing time as well. So you can use that argument to save them time and save yourself time. And this again is if you can't delegate to somebody else that part of it, then just book time every other week or every week, whatever works for you. It's the best way to go about it.
I think we're saving everybody if we're saving each other's time.
Yep, definitely.
And then I think our last question for today is, do you use your urgent or less urgent flags to categorize your emails in order of importance?
When I use flags, it's for stuff that I need to get back to and stuff that I couldn't treat. If it's urgent, I am taking care of it right away. If it's something that is urgent but I need to get back to, then I will flag it. I flag urgent things that I need to get back to in red. That's if I have to wait on somebody else or info from somewhere else that I need to get to, that's urgent. Otherwise, and again, it depends on what you consider urgent. And you can categorize them however you feel comfortable, but just make sure that you're not spending 15 minutes categorizing emails and then you have to get back to all of them and you're basically rereading them every time. So if it's plan ahead, every couple of hours, have 15, 20 minutes to check emails, go through them. Everything you can answer, you answer right away. Anything you can delegate, you ship off to whoever needs to take care of it. And yeah, I use flags when I need to get back to something, of course, because or else I'm going to go through every single email in my inbox to find that one email that I need to get to, which is not efficient, especially these days when we have God knows how many emails coming in every day. So yeah, whatever system works for you is best, seriously.
Thank you so much, Christine. I think that we can all, no matter what industry you're in, take a lot of these key takeaways to our desk today to use. So thank you so much. We did have a couple of people ask whether or not this webinar will be recorded and sent out. Yes, all of our webinars are recorded, and this will be sent out to all of our attendees today. So no worries about that. It will just have to likely be by before end of week that they will appear in your inbox today. But I wanted to thank everybody for joining today's webinar. And of course, thank you to our partner, Christine Bergeron from C3B, for hosting such a valuable webinar today. I hope everybody has some great takeaways from today. And again, thank you so much for joining. For our upcoming webinars, please feel free to go over to cpsa.com/events to look at our calendar. And Christine, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.